When humans turned first contact into stand-up comedy, the Xerian Collective had conquered 47 star systems in the past decade. Their reputation preceded them across the galaxy like a shadow of inevitability. Species trembled at the mere mention of their name. Entire civilizations surrendered before the first shot was fired. Today, they expected no different as their massive fleet of 500 warships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of a small yellow star's domain. Admiral Zeth Prime stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Inevitable Conquest, surveying the third planet from the sun through his tactical display. The world appeared blue and green, obviously inhabited, with clear signs of industrial development and spacefaring capability. Their databases indicated the species called themselves humans, another primitive race to be added to the Collective's growing empire. Communications Officer Vex 9, open a channel to the planet's surface. Zeth Prime commanded, his voice carrying the authority of countless victories. Standard surrender protocol. The holographic display flickered to life, showing what appeared to be a human female in some sort of uniform. She had short brown hair and surprisingly calm eyes for someone about to witness the end of her civilization's independence. The name tag on her uniform read Captain S. Chen, Earth Defense Command. "Greetings, primitive species," Admiral Zeth Prime began, his ceremonial speech polished through repetition. "I am Admiral Zeth Prime of the Xerian Collective. Your world now stands before the might of our fleet. You have one rotation of your planet to surrender unconditionally. Comply, and your species will be granted the honor of serving the Collective. Resist, and face complete annihilation." There was a pause. Then something unprecedented happened. Captain Chen smiled. "Well, that's quite an entrance," she said, her voice carrying an odd lightness. 500 ships, huh? What did you do? Bring the whole neighborhood? Were you worried we might throw rocks at you?" Admiral Zeth Prime blinked his three eyes in confusion. In 47 conquered systems, no species had ever responded to his ultimatum with what appeared to be amusement. "You mock the Collective?" he asked, genuinely perplexed. "Oh no, not at all," Captain Chen replied, though her smile widened. "I'm just impressed by the fuel costs. Do you get a group discount on hyperspace travel? Because with gas prices these days," she whistled, "that must have been expensive." Behind her, other humans could be seen at various workstations. Strangely, several of them appeared to be chuckling. One young man was trying very hard to suppress what looked like laughter. "Your response is inadequate," Admiral Zeth Prime said, his mandibles clicking with irritation. "Perhaps you do not understand the gravity of your situation. Observe." He gestured to his weapons officer, who activated a targeting display showing one of Earth's smaller moons. A single pulse from the Inevitable Conquest's main cannon reduced a mountain on the lunar surface to glowing slag. "Impressive," Captain Chen said, nodding appreciatively. "Very nice light show. Our kids would love that. Do you do birthday parties?" The bridge of the Inevitable Conquest fell silent. Admiral Zeth Prime had expected screaming, pleading, or at minimum, some form of terror. Instead, the humans seemed to be treating his demonstration of overwhelming force as entertainment. Are you making jokes?" he asked. "Well, someone has to," Captain Chen replied. "You guys are so serious. I mean, look at your ship names. Inevitable Conquest. Come on, that's trying a bit hard, don't you think? What's next? The definitely going to win or the super scary death boat?" More laughter erupted from the humans in the background. Dr. Marcus Webb, Earth's leading synopsychologist, was taking notes furiously while grinning. This was exactly what they had hoped for. Sub-Commander Crix, young for a Xerian officer, leaned toward his admiral. "Sir, their psychological profile doesn't match any species we've encountered. Their stress indicators should be off the charts, but they appear genuinely relaxed." "Stressed? Why would we be stressed?" Captain Chen had apparently overheard. "You want to know what's stressful? Traffic on the interstate during rush hour. standing in line at the grocery store when you're in a hurry, trying to assemble furniture with those little picture instructions. This is just Tuesday. Admiral Zeth Prime felt something he hadn't experienced in decades: confusion. You are not taking us seriously. Oh, we're taking you very seriously, Captain Chen assured him. We've been tracking your fleet since you entered our system. Very impressive formation flying, by the way. Very intimidating. The synchronized arrival was particularly nice. Did you practice that? Practice? Admiral Zeth Prime sputtered. This is not a performance. This is conquest. Right? Conquest. Captain Chen nodded sagely. And how's that working out for you so far? Getting the reaction you expected? The truth was, it wasn't. Not at all. In every previous encounter, by this point in the conversation, planetary leaders were either begging for mercy or desperately trying to negotiate terms. Some species fled their worlds entirely rather than face the collective. But these humans seemed to be enjoying themselves. Lieutenant Jake Morrison, monitoring communications from his fighter squadron, couldn't resist chiming in over the open channel. Hey, Captain, should we tell them about the welcome party we planned? We've got balloons and everything. Balloons? Sub-Commander Crix whispered, consulting his cultural database frantically. Oh, right. The balloons. Captain Chen's face lit up. Admiral, we've prepared a traditional Earth welcome for visiting dignitaries. There's cake involved. Do any of your species have dietary restrictions we should know about? Admiral Zeth Prime's 3 eyes began to twitch. We are not. We do not require. This is not a social visit. Well, that's disappointing, Captain Chen sighed. We went to a lot of trouble. Mrs. Henderson from the community center made her famous potato salad. She'll be crushed. Dr. Webb couldn't contain himself any longer and burst into laughter. I'm sorry, he gasped, wiping tears from his eyes. It's just, your expressions are priceless. Has anyone told you you're very photogenic? This is going to make a great documentary. Documentary. Admiral Zeth Prime was beginning to feel like he was losing control of the situation entirely. Oh yes, Dr. Webb explained cheerfully. We're recording all of this for posterity. First contact with a galactic civilization. Historic moment. Though I have to say, your approach could use some work. The whole surrender or die thing is a bit cliché, don't you think? Very 1950s sci-fi movie. We were expecting something more original. By now, the entire bridge crew of the inevitable conquest was staring at the display in bewilderment. Communications Officer Vex 9 had stopped trying to monitor other channels and was simply listening in fascination. Perhaps, Admiral Zeth Prime said slowly, you do not understand what happens to species that defy the collective. Oh, we understand perfectly, Captain Chen said, her tone becoming slightly more serious, but still maintaining that inexplicable cheerfulness. You conquer them. Add them to your empire. Probably make them mine asteroids or something equally unpleasant. Standard Galactic Empire procedure. We've read the manual. You've read the manual. Well, not literally. But we watch a lot of movies. You guys are practically a trope. Big scary aliens with big scary ships demanding surrender. The only thing missing is the dramatic music and the ominous voiceover. Lieutenant Morrison's voice crackled over the comm again. Should I cue the dramatic music, Captain? I've got some Wagner ready to go. Maybe later, Captain Chen replied. We don't want to be rude to our guests. General Rita Santos, watching from Earth Defense Command's Operations Center, allowed herself a small smile. The psychological warfare protocol was working better than they had dared hope. Every minute the aliens spent confused and off balance was another minute for Earth's real defenses to finish positioning themselves. Sir, Sub-Commander Crix whispered to his admiral, perhaps we should consult the Behavioral Analysis Division. This response pattern is unprecedented. No, Admiral Zeth Prime said firmly, his pride stinging. They are merely primitives attempting to delay the inevitable. Prepare the secondary fleet for demonstration bombardment. We will show them the consequences of mockery." "Actually," Captain Chen interjected, apparently having heard the whispered conversation, "before you do that, can I ask you something? I'm genuinely curious. In all your conquests, has anyone ever just said no? Not in a dramatic, defiant way, but just casually declined. Like, thanks for the offer, but we're good." Admiral Zeth Prime paused. "What do you mean?" "I mean, has anyone ever just not been interested? You roll up with your big fleet, make your demands, and someone just says, 'Nah, we're not really into the whole subjugation thing. But thanks for stopping by.'" The question hung in the air. Admiral Zeth Prime realized, with growing unease, that no species had ever simply declined his ultimatum, as if it were a dinner invitation. "You cannot simply decline conquest," he said, though he sounded less certain than before. "Why not?" Captain Chen asked, tilting her head. "I mean, what's the worst that could happen?" The question was so simple, so direct, that it cut through decades of collective doctrine like a knife through paper. Admiral Zeth Prime found himself without an immediate answer. We will destroy you," he managed. "Right, you mentioned that," Captain Chen nodded. "But then what? You'll have a dead planet. Can't mine asteroids with a dead planet. Can't collect taxes from dead people. Seems counterproductive. Really." Dr. Webb leaned into view. "From an economic standpoint, genocide is terribly inefficient. You lose all future productivity, cultural contributions, innovative potential. Really, it's quite wasteful. We do not engage in genocide." Admiral Zeth Prime protested. "No, of course not," Captain Chen agreed. "You're very civilized conquerors. We appreciate that. But the threat's still there, right? Join us or die." Classic protection racket mentality. Lieutenant Morrison's voice cut in again. "Hey, are we still doing the balloons thing? Because I think some of them are starting to deflate." The absolute normalcy of the comment dropped into the middle of what should have been a tense first contact scenario, finally broke something in Admiral Zeth Prime's composure. His mandibles began clicking rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation in his species. "This is not how this works," he exclaimed. "You are supposed to be terrified. You are supposed to recognize our superiority and submit." "Well," Captain Chen said thoughtfully, "that does sound more traditional. But honestly, we're just not feeling it. Maybe it's us. Maybe we're just not conquest material. Some people are into that sort of thing. But it's really not our cup of tea." She paused, then brightened. "Speaking of tea, would you like some? We've got excellent coffee too. Fair trade, organic, locally sourced. Well, locally sourced from Earth, obviously." Admiral Zeth Prime stared at the display for a long moment. Then, slowly, he turned to Sub-Commander Crix. Are they offering us beverages?" "I believe so, sir." "In the middle of a conquest?" "It would appear that way, sir." Admiral Zeth Prime looked back at the screen, where Captain Chen was waiting patiently, still smiling that impossibly calm smile. "This is not possible," he muttered. 47 systems, 47 victories. They all surrendered. They all recognized our power. "Maybe," Captain Chen suggested gently, "that's the problem. Maybe you've been talking to the wrong people. We're pretty stubborn down here. It's a species trait. Once we get an idea in our heads, it's hard to shake us off it." "And what idea is that?" Captain Chen's smile became a grin. "That maybe, just maybe, you're not as scary as you think you are." The silence that followed that statement seemed to stretch across the vacuum of space itself. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Zeth Prime of the Syrian Collective was completely, utterly speechless. And somewhere in the background, he could swear he heard the humans laughing. Part 2. How humanity's greatest weapon was a good laugh. The next several hours would be remembered in galactic history as the most confusing military engagement ever recorded. Admiral Zeth Prime, still reeling from his initial contact with Captain Chen, had called for reinforcements. The Hive Mind Collective, allies of the Syrian Empire, dispatched their own fleet of crystalline vessels. Ambassador Veltar of the ancient Zephyrian Republic arrived with her diplomatic corps, intrigued by reports of a species that treated conquest like a comedy show. By the time Earth's sun reached its zenith, nearly 2,000 alien vessels of various designs and origins had gathered in the outer system. It was the largest armada ever assembled for the conquest of a single world. The humans remained utterly unimpressed. "Wow, word really gets around fast out there," Captain Chen observed, watching the tactical display as more ships continued to arrive. "It's like the galaxy's biggest block party. Are you all staying for dinner?" General Rita Santos had joined the conversation from Earth Defense Command, though she maintained the same bizarrely casual demeanor that seemed to characterize all human responses. "Captain Chen, should we set up a viewing area? I'm getting reports that people are gathering on rooftops with lawn chairs and popcorn." "Popcorn's a good idea," Lieutenant Morrison chimed in from his fighter. "This is better than the Super Bowl. Hey, do any of you aliens do color commentary? You've got great dramatic voices." Ambassador Veltar, a tall, elegant being with iridescent blue skin and 4 arms, leaned forward in her ship's command chair. Her species had been observing galactic politics for millennia, and she had never encountered anything like this situation. "Humans," she said, her voice melodious but puzzled, "do you truly not understand the gravity of your position? You face the combined might of 3 major galactic civilizations." "Oh, we understand perfectly," Dr. Webb replied, adjusting his glasses. "It's very grave, extremely serious. The fate of our entire species hangs in the balance. Classic David versus Goliath scenario, except there are several thousand Goliaths, and they're all very politely taking turns to threaten us." "Politely?" The question came from Admiral Zeth Prime, who was still trying to process how his simple conquest had turned into this bizarre diplomatic circus. "Very politely," Captain Chen confirmed. "Everyone's been quite civilized about the whole surrender or die thing. Very professional, though I do think Ambassador Veltar has the best delivery. Very commanding presence." Ambassador Veltar found herself strangely pleased by the compliment, which confused her greatly. "I thank you." The Hive Mind Collective, speaking through their organic ships with a chorus of perfectly synchronized voices, finally entered the conversation. "Humans, your behavior patterns do not compute. Explain your LACK of FEAR artist bonus." "Oh, that's easy," Lieutenant Morrison replied cheerfully. "We're terrified. Absolutely petrified. You should see my heart rate monitor. It's going crazy." "Then why do you continue this in a appropriate elevity way?" "Because," Dr. Webb explained, "fear and humor aren't mutually exclusive emotions for humans. We often laugh when we're scared. It's a coping mechanism. Helps us think clearly under pressure. Also," Captain Chen added, "you have to admit this whole situation is pretty funny. I mean, look at it from our perspective. We're one little planet, and you've brought enough firepower to glass half the galaxy. It's like bringing a rocket launcher to deal with a mosquito." "Are you calling yourselves mosquitoes?" Admiral Zeth Prime asked, his confusion deepening. "Well, we're definitely the underdog here," Captain Chen acknowledged. "Though mosquitoes are pretty resilient, hard to swat. Annoying when they buzz around your head. Actually, the metaphor works better than I thought." General Santos decided it was time to move to the next phase of their strategy. "Speaking of annoying," she said conversationally, "I should probably mention that you're all in violation of about 24 interstellar maritime laws." The communication channels fell silent. "I beg your pardon," Ambassador Veltar said finally. "Well, you've entered our solar system without permission, established a blockade without formal declaration of war, and are currently engaged in what our legal department classifies as unlawful intimidation with intent to coerce political compliance. That's just the basics. Don't get me started on the environmental impact assessments you haven't filed. Dr. Webb pulled out a tablet and began reading. According to the Galactic Maritime Code, Section 47B, any fleet exceeding 50 vessels requires advance notice and proper docking permits. You're currently at, let's see, 1,937 vessels. That's quite a fine you're looking at. Fines. Admiral Zeth Prime sputtered. We are conducting a military operation. Without proper paperwork, Captain Chen pointed out sadly. Very irregular. Our bureaucrats are having fits. Mrs. Patterson from the permit office called 3 times asking where your forms were. Lieutenant Morrison's voice crackled with barely suppressed laughter. Should I tell them about the parking violations? Parking violations. The question came from several aliens simultaneously. Oh yes, General Santos said seriously. You're all illegally parked. This is a designated shipping lane. There are signs and everything. The fine for impeding commercial traffic is substantial. Ambassador Veltar consulted her own legal database frantically. But we are a military force. These laws do not apply to military operations. Do you have a formal declaration of war? Dr. Webb asked politely. That is. Ambassador Veltar paused. Declaration of war implies recognition of sovereignty. We do not recognize primitive species as sovereign entities. Ah, Captain Chen said, nodding understandingly. So you're not at war with us. You're just threatening us illegally. That actually makes it worse. Now it's harassment and trespassing. The legal implications began to sink in across the various fleets. The Zephyrian Republic, in particular, prided themselves on their adherence to galactic law. Ambassador Veltar looked genuinely distressed. Admiral Zeth Prime decided to cut through the bureaucratic nonsense. Enough. We will demonstrate our power and end this farce. Weapons officer, prepare a demonstration bombardment. Target the humans' moon. Actually, Lieutenant Morrison interjected, I wouldn't do that if I were you. And why not? Well, for one thing, you'll make the tides go crazy. Do you have any idea how that'll affect our surfing conditions? People will be very upset. I do not care about your surfing. Admiral Zeth Prime growled. You should, Captain Chen said, suddenly serious for the first time. Because if you damage our moon, you'll also destabilize its orbit. That could send debris flying everywhere, including toward your ships. Dr. Webb looked up from his calculations. Actually, she's right. A bombardment of that magnitude would create a debris field that would persist for decades. Quite hazardous to navigation. Are you giving us safety advice? Sub-Commander Crix asked. Well, yes, Captain Chen replied. We don't want anyone getting hurt. That would be terrible. The pure, unfeigned concern in her voice caught everyone off guard. Here were beings facing extinction, and they were worried about their would-be conqueror's safety. Ambassador Veltar found herself speaking without conscious thought. That is unexpectedly considerate of you. We're a considerate species, General Santos said with a shrug. It's kind of our thing. We even put warning labels on coffee cups to tell people the coffee is hot. Coffee is hot. The Hive Mind Collective sounded genuinely puzzled. Very hot, Lieutenant Morrison confirmed. But people kept burning themselves, so we added labels. It's called looking out for each other. Weird concept, I know. Admiral Zeth Prime was beginning to feel like he was losing his grip on reality. This is not how conquest works. You are supposed to be our enemies. Why? Captain Chen asked simply. The question hung in space like a challenge. Because you are resisting us, Admiral Zeth Prime said, though he sounded uncertain. But we're not really resisting, Dr. Webb pointed out. We're just not cooperating. There's a difference. Resistance implies hostility. We're not hostile. We're just disinclined to participate. You cannot simply opt out of conquest. Admiral Zeth Prime exclaimed. Why not? This time it was General Santos who asked. Who made that rule? The question sparked a moment of genuine philosophical crisis across the alien fleets. The concept of conquest was so fundamental to their understanding of interstellar relations that none of them had ever questioned its basic assumptions. Ambassador Veltar spoke slowly, as if working through a complex problem. Because might makes right. Because the strong naturally dominate the weak. Says who? Lieutenant Morrison asked. I mean, that's one way to look at things, but it's not the only way. We prefer live and let live ourselves. But without conquest, without expansion, how do civilizations grow? Sub-Commander Crix found himself asking. Trade. Captain Chen said simply. Diplomacy. Cultural exchange. Tourism. There are lots of ways to interact that don't involve threatening people. Dr. Webb nodded enthusiastically. We'd love to set up exchange programs. Imagine what we could learn from each other. Your mathematics, our music, your technology, our art. Think of the possibilities. The suggestion sent ripples of confusion through the assembled fleets. Many of these civilizations hadn't considered the possibility of voluntary cultural exchange in centuries. You would share your knowledge freely? Ambassador Veltar asked. Of course, General Santos replied. That's how knowledge works best. The more people who have it, the more useful it becomes. Admiral Zeth Prime made one last desperate attempt to regain control of the situation. This is meaningless philosophy. You will surrender, or we will take your world by force. Actually, Captain Chen said, her tone shifting slightly. That brings up an interesting point. You keep talking about taking our world by force, but you haven't actually tried yet. Why is that? The question caught Admiral Zeth Prime off guard. We are giving you the opportunity to surrender honorably. For how long? It's been 6 hours since you arrived. That's a pretty generous deadline for a species that claims to be ruthlessly efficient conquerors. Dr. Webb consulted his tablet. Actually, according to our research, your usual conquest timeline is approximately 47 minutes from arrival to surrender. We're way past that now. Perhaps, Lieutenant Morrison suggested helpfully, you're enjoying the conversation. I mean, when's the last time anyone actually talked back to you guys? The uncomfortable silence that followed suggested he had hit uncomfortably close to the truth. Ambassador Veltar was the first to speak. It has been some time since we engaged in actual dialogue during a first contact scenario. How long? Captain Chen asked gently. Approximately 400 years, Ambassador Veltar admitted. 400 years, Dr. Webb whistled. That's a long time to go without a real conversation. No wonder you're all so formal. You're out of practice. We are not out of practice, Admiral Zeth Prime protested. We are efficient. We do not waste time with unnecessary dialogue. But is it really unnecessary? General Santos asked. I mean, look what we've accomplished in just a few hours of talking. We've avoided a war, discussed interstellar law, shared safety concerns, and even talked about cultural exchange. That seems pretty productive to me. The truth was beginning to dawn on several of the alien commanders. They had been so focused on the mechanics of conquest that they had forgotten why they conquered in the first place. Was it really just for resources and territory? Or had they been seeking something else all along? Sub-Commander Crix spoke quietly to his admiral. Sir, permission to speak freely? Admiral Zeth Prime, emotionally exhausted by the day's events, simply nodded. Sir, when did we last have a conversation like this? When did we last encounter a species that treated us like people instead of just conquerors? The question struck at something deep in Admiral Zeth Prime's psychology. He realized, with a shock, that he couldn't remember the last time anyone had spoken to him without fear or hatred. These humans were treating him with casual friendliness, as if he were a neighbor who had dropped by unexpectedly. He began, then stopped. I do not remember. Captain Chen seemed to sense his emotional state. It must be lonely, she said softly. Always being the scary ones. Always having people run away or surrender before you can really talk to them. The simple compassion in her voice did something unexpected to Admiral Zeth Prime. For the first time in decades, he felt understood. We are warriors, he said, but his voice lacked its earlier conviction. It is our nature. Maybe, Dr. Webb suggested gently, but maybe that's not all you are. Maybe you're also explorers, scientists, artists, philosophers. Maybe conquest became a habit instead of a choice. The hive mind collective's synchronized voices carried a note of uncertainty. We ad notc orniside eorid alt ornativ int or pretattions of our nature. Well, Lieutenant Morrison said cheerfully, that's what conversations are for, figuring out new ways to look at things. Ambassador Veltar found herself laughing. Actually laughing. For the first time in centuries. You have completely derailed our invasion with politeness and curiosity. Is that what we did? Captain Chen asked, grinning. I thought we were just being ourselves. That, General Santos said, is exactly what you did. And maybe that's enough. Admiral Zeth Prime looked around at his fleet, then at the other assembled armadas, then back at the humans on his screen. Slowly, incredibly, he began to smile, a terrifying expression on his species, but somehow appropriate. Perhaps, he said slowly, we should discuss those cultural exchange programs you mentioned. The cheer that went up from the human side of the communication was so infectious that several alien crew members found themselves cheering along, though they weren't entirely sure why. Later, historians would debate whether humanity's greatest victory was won through superior tactics, advanced technology, or sheer luck. The truth was simpler and more profound. They had won by being genuinely, authentically human, by treating potential enemies as potential friends, by responding to hostility with humor, to threats with kindness, and to conquest with curiosity. And sometimes, it turned out, that was enough to change the galaxy. The invasion fleets became the first interstellar cultural exchange program in galactic history. Admiral Zeth Prime retired from military service to become an ambassador. The Hive Mind Collective discovered the joys of human comedy and began incorporating humor into their previously monotone communications. And Captain Sarah Chen became known throughout the galaxy as the woman who stopped a war with a smile and a terrible joke about parking violations. But that, as they say, is another story.